there's been a thing where Trump and others, Republicans mainly, I'm sorry for those of you who want to believe Republicans never do anything wrong. They've been saying that 13,099, so basically 3,100 illegal immigrant murderers, convicted murderers, are roaming free on the U.S. streets. This is what Trump and other Republicans have been saying. That according to the data, 13,100 known murderers were released onto the streets of America because they were immigrants and Biden didn't want to hold on to them. And so he just released them. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, recently responded to Representative Tony Gonzalez, a Republican from Texas, question on the number of non-citizen criminals on ICE's docket for removal, deportation from the United States. The data in the letter has blown up in a big way during the presidential election, with former President Trump highlighting the letter's contents. Commentators focused on the letter's claim that ICE did not detain 13,100 migrants convicted of homicide. But these people tended to misunderstand the data. The first untrue claim about the data is that the 13,100 non-detained migrants convicted of homicide are free to roam the United States. Boy, did that not sound a little fishy? That 13,100 convicted murderers were just set free across the streets of America. Did it not seem like you might be a little wrong on that? That is not true. Migrants incarcerated for homicide are considered quote-unquote non-detained by ICE because they're in federal prisons. You idiots. They're in prison, so they're not detained by ICE. They're detained by other people. So when ICE uses the term non-detained, it just means it's not in their hands. It doesn't mean, oh, you're a murderer, you're free to go. I mean, we have one of the most brutal anti-immigrant systems in the world. Do you honestly believe that ICE is like, listen, we're detaining you, you're going in this cell. Hold on, I'm the murderer. Oh, never mind. Go ahead. See you later. Free to go. Of course not, you idiots, you clowns. The second untrue claim is that the small number of migrant murderers who are not in prison were just released willy-nilly. Releases of criminal migrants decreased after Biden took office. So just that line, just think about that line for a second. Criminal migrants were released more under Trump than Biden. All these things they're telling you are bullshit. Oh, Biden's, easier on immigrants and migrants and all. It's like, no, they're equally awful. U.S. law requires migrants who are convicted of homicide to be detained pending their deportation, but there are exceptions. The major one is for migrants who were convicted, served their time in prison. A lot of people seem to want to not understand how prison works. The idea is, if you did a bad thing and you went to prison and you served your time, you're not supposed to keep being punished for the thing. It's supposed to be over. Instead, people are like, well, he's a murderer. Well, that could be true, and I don't like murderers any more than you do, but if he spent 40 years in prison and they then released him because he was done spending his 40 years in prison, he's done with his time. Like, it's over. It's over. You got your awful punishment. It's done. Move on with your lives. But no, we don't do that. We're like, well, maybe we should put him back in the prison because he did the thing. And this is even more insane when it's not even murder, when it's like, he was a drug dealer. Okay, but he spent 20 years in prison and he's not a drug dealer anymore. I mean, besides the fact that drugs should be a health issue and not a crime issue, but let's ignore that for a second. He did the thing. He did the time. You got your punishment. What do you want? So they serve time in prison and they're unable to be deported because there's no repatriation agreement with their countries of origin, where they routinely violate their agreements. The country routinely violates agreements. The U.S. does not have agreements or has limited agreements with Iran, Cuba, China, Vietnam, Laos, and more. So basically, the only ones that are convicted murderers that are free to walk the streets in the United States are ones who served all their time and cannot be deported because the U.S. doesn't have a deportation agreement with the country. So the U.S. kind of can't do anything. What do you want them to keep imprisoning them for a murder they already served their time for? And that number is probably a tiny number of people. So of these 13,100, almost all of them are considered non-detained by ICE because they're in federal prison. You idiots. You ass clowns. Like, how dumb do you have to be to honestly believe that one of the most brutal, anti-immigrant, just anyone who's been convicted of anything, countries in the world is just like, hey, you're an illegal immigrant. We're locking you. Oh, you're a murderer. Oh, yeah, just go ahead. Oh, no, that's fine. No, you don't have to sign anything. You're good. We'll just see you later. Have fun. But yes, one more note on this is just how many more immigrants Biden-Harris administration has deported than the Trump administration. It's pretty incredible. So for all you who think that Trump is harsher on immigrants, he certainly certainly talks harsher on immigrants. Here are the DHS repatriations, that means deportations, from 2014 to 2024. So from 2014 to 2020, meaning through the Trump administration, the numbers don't vary that much. You got some years you have 450,000, some years 560,000. The lowest is 2017, 387,000. Highest is 2020, 608,000. I mean, it varies a little, but it's not anything crazy. 2021, 1.3 million people deported. 2022, 1.46 million people deported. 2023, 1.2 million people deported. Basically doubled or more than doubled every year of the Biden-Harris administration. And neither of these two idiot corporate parties want you talking about these numbers. Trump doesn't want you talking about these numbers because it shows that actually the Democrats are a little, if not more, harsher on immigrants than migrants and refugees than the Trump administration was. Biden and Harris don't want you talking about these numbers because it shows that the Democrats, if anything, are harsher on immigrants than the Trump administration. Neither side wants you talking about these numbers, but these are the numbers. And yet again, like we've seen the same thing with immigration, with war, spending money on nuclear arsenal, number of oil permits allowed. And here's the thing, and by see the same thing, I mean that Democrats are actually allowing more of these things. There's more war. There's, Gaza, genocide in Gaza. There's more immigrants deported. There's more refugees deported. There's more oil drilling. And this doesn't mean Republicans are good. The reason you're seeing this is largely because the two parties, which are actually one party, two cheeks on the same backside, as George Galloway would say, they're one party, and they're actually both trying to do the same thing. They're both trying to deport everyone. They're both trying to create as much war as possible. We're a war economy. They're both doing all those things. But the Democrats are more efficient at it, experienced at it. They put diplomats and bureaucrats in these positions that are better at these things, whereas Trump is just incompetent. So it doesn't mean they wanted any less of this. They're both sociopaths, and the Democrats seem to be a little more facile at achieving these things, is basically what you're seeing. I'll just conclude that little rant by saying votepact.org. I just think this is a good idea. I'm not getting paid to say this or anything. If you know anyone who is planning on holding their nose and voting for Kamala Harris or holding their nose and voting for Trump, they don't like them, they just are going to vote for them. If you know anyone like that, that person should find a fellow person who is voting for the other one. So one person holding their nose for Trump, one person holding their nose for Harris, and both of them should sign a pact with each other to not vote for either of those people and instead vote third party. Any third party. Could be Libertarian, could be Jill Stein, could be Claudia de la Cruz, could be Cornel West, any third party. And what that does is it does not hurt those candidates that they were going to vote for, Trump or Harris, but it helps third parties immensely. If millions more people voted for third parties, even though they won't win, it still helps third parties a lot.